As a big fan of Lord of the Rings, I'm disappointed in Return to Moria. There was so much potential here, so many different ways a game could explore the dwarves going back to the mines of Moria in the 4th Age. But unfortunately, Return to Moria feels like an early access survival crafting game that had the Lord of the Rings label just slapped onto it and shipped out the door before it was ready. My advice is, just like Gandalf told the party before he entered the mines, there are older and fouler gameplay mechanics than just orcs in the deep places of this world.
Dwarves from every clan have answered your call, despite the King Under the Mountain's objection. Lord Gimli, Erebor will not support entering the Black Pit.
If the king wants to stop us, he can come himself.
Every attempt you've made has failed. This is a sign.
No signs or kings are going to stop us. This is the time to reclaim Khazad-dûm.
Starting this review off with the technicals, Return to Moria is pretty rough. There will be glitches galore in your playthrough. You'll be clipping through objects, there's horrible AI pathfinding and response to your character, crashes, and disappearing items. There aren't any FPS drops, and it stays a pretty consistent 60 FPS on the PlayStation 5, which isn't surprising since Return to Moria looks like a PlayStation 3 game. The character models are bad in-game, the environments aren't very detailed, and it's easy to get lost since everything tends to look the same. Return to Moria isn't ugly, instead it feels slapped together. Return to Moria is set in the 4th Age, where the One Ring has been destroyed and Sauron has been banished from Middle-earth forever. Gimli, son of Gloin, has taken on an expedition to reclaim the mines of Moria. Despite the fact that the Balrog is dead and the Dark Lord is absent, there are still a lot of dangers lurking in the depths of Moria. From lore, there would have been a lot of orcs and other creatures that go bump in the night. But in this game, it's mostly bats, wolves, bears, and the occasional orc. Look, it's pretty hard to fumble the Lord of the Rings. Everything is already all set out there for you. Take the mines of Moria, recreate the look of it from the books and the movies, and then fill it in with enemies you would recognize from the lore. I don't remember the books saying the mines of Moria were filled with wolves and bears and giant spiders, but that's what the developers here went for. The story itself is pretty simple. Gimli is leading the expedition into the mines, but they can't get through the front door. It's sealed shut. They try to speak friend, but it doesn't open. They try to blow it up with explosives, and your customized character falls to the floor, either alone or with friends, depending on how you want to play this game. That's pretty much it. You explore the mines, you craft and mine for materials until you kill a dragon and some other enemies, and then open the doors. The story pretty much sucks. Aside from the brief cutscene at the beginning and the end, there's a few tidbits of lore you can find along the way, but there isn't much going on here. It's as bare bones as you can make it and still call it a Lord of the Rings game. It could have worked just as well as generic Dwarf Mining Simulator 2.
Is that blasting fire?
I'd stand back if I were you.
This is madness! Gimli, you can't! We have to wait for Durin!
Durin's not here. We have to do this ourselves. Maybe this will wake him up.
Alright, moving on to gameplay. There are two major parts, exploration and building. Exploration involves you moving deeper through the mines of Moria in search of a way out or other quest markers. Push past obstacles and enemies towards your goal. You'll find elven ruins, dwarven ruins, materials to collect, and minerals to mine. That leads to the building crafting. You can make a base, and it's really required in order to keep progress in this game. You want better weapons to fight the harder enemies, you want better armor to survive, a better pickaxe to mine better materials or progress through the mine, and a better hammer to rebuild statues along the way to find new crafting recipes. This is where the exploration and the base building mechanics clash. The story wants you to progress deeper into the mines, to make it as far as you can from where you started, enter new areas, and push on to the end. But the upgrades required to go deeper into the mine means you need a base to craft stuff and to explore the area around it to mine materials for those upgrades. Do you see the disconnect? Push deep, but keep going back to your base to upgrade. Once you get so far through the mines, you really can't go back to your original base, so you're going to need to start a new one. Also, each time you leave your base, there is a chance that a horde of enemies are going to come along and destroy it. So you're basically periodically abandoning your old base, pushing into the depths as far as you can go without dying, setting up a new base, and mining resources around it. Once it's rebuilt and expanded, you upgrade your character as much as you can using the recipes you have, then you go even further. Why is the game set up this way? I think it's for busy work, mostly. It's an excuse to pad out the gameplay length. There's something else that's incredibly frustrating about exploration as well. When you reach a new area, you need to upgrade your weapons and equipment to mine or fight in that area. You'll always be underleveled in a new area. You can't prep before you get there, since the resources you need are only going to be available in that area. For example, at one point you're going to need steel equipment to progress. The enemies in this one area take reduced damage unless you use a steel weapon, and the walls that contain minerals can only be damaged with steel pickaxes. So you enter this area and find out that a lot of the enemies you can't fight without dying. So you run past them all and you set up your new base. You mine a lot, you craft a lot, your base is overrun by a horde that destroys all your stuff, so you start again. You rinse and repeat, except the quality of the items increases each time you go to a new area. It's not really fun, the story is not worth it to see. So you have the option as well to play sandbox mode, which is the game without the story. Mining can be fun at times, and the exploration can be interesting, but the combat is simply horrendous. The difficulty is out to lunch for a solo player unless you remember to set the game to solo or story difficulty at the beginning. If not, you're going to be overrun by enemies every time. Enemies are damage sponges and combat is floaty and horrid. Even on the easier difficulties, there are still way too many enemies so that you're going to get surrounded at times. The UI is really bad on console. It's really hard to figure out how to transfer items, requiring multiple button presses at once to exchange a stack. You hold right trigger and press X. What's wrong with a single button? You need to use multiples. Some things can be quickly used, such as building a platform, but everything else is going to require you going into the menu, where the build and inventory tabs are wedged between the story and the map and all that stuff. Speaking of the map, it's really bugged as hell. It doesn't show levels, meaning if things are overlapped, good luck navigating. It also didn't show correctly where my character was. It was showing me at the start of the game when I was clearly well beyond it. There's also no pathfinding function or setting a marker. Since I'm trying to keep this review pretty short, I'm going to go through the pros and cons of Return to Moria. For the pros, it uses the Lord of the Rings lore at times. It does add a bit of flavor to the game. Multiplayer can be fun if you have friends to play it with. The character creator is pretty interesting with few options, and there is a bit of a story here. Now for the cons, the game looks bad. The game plays bad. The build feature is bad. Exploration is bad. Combat is bad. The map is bad. My conclusion is that if you're looking for a survival, crafting, exploration game, just play Valheim. Return to Moria isn't worth the money, unless you're a massive fan of Lord of the Rings, and even then you might find some enjoyment, but mostly not. I'm the Casual Console Gamer, and I'll see you all in the next review where I play as a cat in Stray.